Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Public Protective Services Committee for October 10th. The voting members of this committee are myself, Councillor O'Connor, Councillor Berg, and of course, Mayor Clayton. Just a note to the committee, staff have asked that we switch items 3.3 and 3.4 just to better manage the people that are part of this. Are there any objections to that? Not seeing any, so we'll switch those two agenda items around, and I'll start with Chief Lemieux for a service area update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'll start by giving an update on two capital projects. First one's Fletcher House. So Fletcher House is a privately owned facility that will provide a total of 44 housing units. 18 of those are supportive housing units, while the remaining 24 are independent living units. The expected date of occupancy for Fletcher House is now November 1st. And the Housing Hub, a group of homeless sector service providers led by Housing and Homeless Initiatives, will be involved in referring the first group of eligible individuals to Fletcher House. And the successful service provider and property manager is Hearth Social Profit Company. That service provider has toured the facility and is working closely with Housing and Homelessness Initiatives Department on a program startup. And a tour of that facility for City Council will be scheduled shortly. On the Coordinated Care Campus, we have 3 service providers that have expressed an interest in the Coordinated Care Campus to provide the 24-hour supportive housing services. So we have gone back and issued a request for proposal, and that will have has a closing date of October 24th, 2023. From Community and Social Development, the City of Grande Prairie will be hosting the Opioids Don't Discriminate exhibit that was gifted to us from Strathcona County. That'll be at the Teresa Sargent Hall during National Addiction Awareness Week from Tuesday, November 21st to Friday, November 24th. And we'll make sure that an invitation is in the council calendar for that. And through our coordinated system of care, 3 community-based organizations have been granted funds to purchase car seats and distribute them for free. And this is directly addressing and meeting identified community needs. On the housing and homelessness front, the Grande Prairie's Housing Accelerator Fund application was submitted to CMHC on September the 19th. The city potentially qualifies for $13.5 million in funding, and CMHC staff advised that cities may be updated on the status before the end of 2023. So take a sit and wait on that particular one. Housing and Homeless Initiatives has coordinated several training opportunities for October that will deepen the knowledge and experience of homeless sector staff in mental health, trauma-informed principles, and other types of training. On enforcement services front, the peace officers attended the Peace, Autism Society and Inclusion Alberta's autism-friendly event at Safety City on September 16th. And on September 20th, peace officers conducted traffic control operations to avoid gridlock caused by protesters while ensuring pedestrian safety during the protest walk. On emergency management side of things with GPREP, evacuees from the Northwest Territories return home the week of September the 18th, and a debrief of the event was held on September 29th with a final report to be presented to the GPREP agency later this fall. Update from the fire department, the computer automated dispatch upgrade project for GP 911 is scheduled to go live this week. This represents a significant milestone for both the project and our community. And over 100 firefighters, consisting of 50 from Grande Prairie Fire Department and 50 from the Northwest region, have received specialized training in responding to wildfires with a grant from the federal government, and this was facilitated by the International Association of Firefighters. That training happened over the last week, ended on Saturday, and I had the opportunity to attend on Saturday at the Aspen Ridge neighborhood is where the training occurred. So that's to fight learn the skills to fight wildland-urban interface fires. So we thank the International Association of Firefighters for bringing that to our community. On the RCMP front, on September 20th, the Grande Prairie RCMP and peace officers provided traffic control and public safety for the 1 Million March for Children protest and a counter-protest. The march started at Avondale Park and went to school district offices. And of note, there were no issues at either district office, and approximately 500 people marched in the protest with about 30 counter-protesters. Organizers and security staff for the march, as well as members of the public for the counter-protest, thanked law enforcement for their involvement in keeping everyone safe. Also from the RCMP, on October the 1st, Grande Prairie RCMP arrested a male and female and seized a significant amount of drugs after responding to a report of an impaired driver. During a search of the vehicle, RCMP located what is believed to be cocaine, crystal meth, and fentanyl. RCMP also seized an airsoft gun, a knife, 4 iPhones, ammunition, and various drug trafficking paraphernalia. And also from the RCMP side of things, a several-month-long drug investigation by the Grande Prairie RCMP drug unit has led to one arrest. On September 22nd, RCMP executed a search warrant at his residence in Grande Prairie, and he seized a number of illegal substances. As a result of the search, a 23-year-old Grande Prairie resident is facing 3 charges. Mobile outreach, May 1 to September 30th. During the period of May 1 to September 30th, mobile outreach responded to 28 calls for needle debris and 13 calls for drug paraphernalia, and total 2,335 needles have been collected through community response efforts and proactive needle sweeps. From the Community Knowledge Campus, the Dave Barr Community Center, in collaboration with Invest GP, an expression of interest for lease space at the Dave Barr Community Center was issued this summer. Any child care service provider was a successful proponent, and the lease negotiation process is underway. It is anticipated that service provision will begin before the end of the year. And in collaboration with Alberta Health Services, the first session of Connect to Move was launched on September 26th at the Eastlink Centre. This program bridges the gap between early stroke intervention and supports continued stroke recovery for participants. Also in collaboration with Alberta Health Services, Breastfeeding Week was celebrated at Eastlink Centre on October the 5th, and information and support was available from public health nurses to everyone at the Treehouse Play area. From the Design Works Center, 2 decades of Twin Ice was celebrated on September 23rd to celebrate the 20th anniversary of the Design Works Center, the Hockey Legends of Grande Prairie, and the Grande Prairie Athletic Club. Participants enjoyed a free community barbecue and a showcase, a trade show, an alumni hockey game, and more. And a private special tribute to John Lainers was also held in the Legends Lounge, recognizing the work that Councillor Lainers contributed to the community and the region. And from sports, wellness, and culture, Alberta Winter Games promotional campaigns have begun. A large window banner will be installed on the west side of the Eastlink Centre promoting the games. And in lieu of a quarterly forum, neighborhood associations have been invited to attend a municipal policing engagement session specifically for neighborhoods, and that'll occur on October 24th. And administration recently presented at Rotary regarding associations and opportunities to support our neighborhoods. Mr. Chair, that's my lengthy report. I apologize for the length of the report, but it's been a couple of weeks since we've met. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Chief Lemieux. Councillor Berg.
Yeah, thanks, Chair Bressie. Around the Fletcher House, that's great news that we've got an operator. They're a local operator. Can you tell us just a little bit more about them?
I don't have a lot of background on that particular organization, Mr. Berg, but I will certainly follow up with an email to council to give you a little more background.
Yeah, and that's fine too. I just kind of wanted a little bit of publicity out there that these are people that have been engaged in the community, been on their website, familiar with some of the people. So yeah, I just wanted to get the word out that there's some good people that are taking that over.
And Mr. Chair, I will add that yes, they are well known in the community and submitted a very good proposal.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Thiessen.
Yeah, just chiming in for some supplemental information. Our social profit company, they've been located in the downtown area for quite some time, trying to engage people into our projects, our min sheds and stuff like that. The runner of that is actually my old boss, Deborah Gregson. She used to work for Canadian Mental Health Association, and her tenure ended there with the Fletcher House. So it seems like it's coming back full circle. Now she's going to be running, well, it was Fletcher Place before, now it's Fletcher House. So it'll be running it there. So yeah, congratulations to them.
Great, thank you. Anybody else? All right, Chief Lemieux, I'll turn it back to you to tee off our first report on FireSmart Information.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So FireSmart Information is, the report has been prepared by our Fire Chief, and I'll ask our Fire Chief, Preben Bosson, to come and speak to his report, please.
Mr. Bosson.
Thank you, Chief Lemieux, and through the chair.
Sorry, just before you start, I think it's Councillor O'Toole that's on. Somebody who's online, could they just mute themselves?
Yeah, I saw they have muted themselves. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. As we experienced in May of this year, wildfires in Grande Prairie can pose a significant risk in our community. Multiple city departments joined forces to assess ways to minimize these wildfire risks and enhance safety for our residents. During our collaborative discussions, numerous options were explored and documented in the report. It became evident that there are several effective measures that can be taken to reduce the likelihood of a fire and mitigate potential damage if one were to occur. Furthermore, it became clear that many stakeholders have a role to play in the planning and prevention phases to mitigate these risks before a fire occurs. It is important to stress that wildfire risk reduction is not solely the responsibility of the fire department. It's a collective responsibility that involves everyone. To achieve a meaningful reduction in wildfire risk, every member of our community, including homeowners, park users, the Parks Department, planning, engineering, and others, can contribute positively. While the fire department remains prepared to respond if a fire does occur, we all have a part to play in preventing and mitigating these risks. In preparation for the possibility of another dry season, the Grande Prairie Fire Department has recently completed training for our firefighters on this topic, ensuring our operational readiness. This was also mentioned by Chief Lemieux. Open to any questions in relation to the report.
Thank you. A question I've got, not seeing anybody jumping right away, is I'm just seeing the recommendation is to receive this report from information. So if committee does receive this report for information, is administration going to action all the recommendations that are in this? Or are these things that administration is still just thinking about maybe doing?
I'll probably refer this to Chief Lemieux.
Chief Lemieux.
Yes, thank you. So there'll be further information coming back to committee. For example, we've applied for 2 grants from FRIA to do some major work. So once we hear from FRIA, we'll certainly come back to committee. The intent is to let council know what we're working on. So I'm not saying we're necessarily going to action all of these things right away. Some of them need to come back to council. For example, if we need to make some changes to the land use bylaw, that needs to come back to council. So some of these items will come back to council, but we wanted to bring back a report so that council knew what we were working on.
Great. Well, thank you. I'm glad you mentioned the land use bylaw. That's one that I'm personally particularly interested in. So absent any direction from committee other than receive this report for information, will land use bylaws be coming back to council eventually for these covenants? Will administration be proposing those for us to consider absent any other direction, or do we need specific direction to have that consideration?
So again, that's something that we're working through with the various departments that are involved, and I assume at some point you'll hear back from us in terms of proposed change. If we are proposing any changes, you'll certainly hear from the group. Okay,
thank you. Councillor Platt.
Thanks, Chair Bressie. Just a similar question on that. When I look at number 3 of the recommendations of removing excess fuel load, just yesterday I was out at South Bear doing the wax wings and noticing that we're doing a lot of work out there. So this stuff's already happening. Is that just through parks that we're doing that as just a separate action?
There are certainly some items that we're actioning as we speak, and others that are in the planning. So these conversations are going to continue between all of these departments.
Okay, and just to build on Councillor Bressie, also like the number 1, I'm just wondering when that comes back, if that does come back to council, we can find out how that impacts existing covenants. I can appreciate it's probably easy just to make new ones, but there are still areas in our city that actually have probably not the right shingles going on the roofs for FireSmart, but those are covenants that have been adopted. So I'm just curious if we can get information on how that change would work as well.
Certainly, I can't speak to it directly, but we're having conversations, and we've had conversations with certain neighborhoods in terms of some of those covenants and the process that we need to go through to change those if the neighborhood wishes to make that change.
Okay, well, appreciate that. Thank you.
Councillor Bosch.
Thank you, Chair Bressie. My question is in regards to potential new sprinkler systems or fire-resistant materials. You are looking at getting grants for other things. Is there granting available for residents that build with these new type of products? And or are we looking at the procurement side for the city in giving, certain priorities to these different building products?
So maybe if I can attempt to answer that one also. On the first question with regards to grants, I'm not aware of any grants. So some of it is education, but we keep our eyes and ears open because of the situations that we've experienced in Alberta. There may very well be grants available at some point, but at this point we're not familiar with any.
Okay.
Councillor O'Connor.
Yep.
Oh, sorry.
Mary has a question, sorry. I was going to do the business, but that's...
Sure, Mayor Clayton, sorry about that.
Thanks. Chief Lemieux or appropriate, can you tell me, in regards to the item that identifies the 6-month contract for the FireSmart home assessments, I understand we're currently doing some of that. And I know that a report came from a gentleman to committee in regards to Fort McMurray's initiative, and I think they've done 600 or 700 homes in assessment of whether or not homes are FireSmart safe. This $200,000 price tag, is this something that is coming potentially through a grant, or coming back to budget for consideration? Can you tell me a bit more about the initiative on the FireSmart home assessments?
Yeah, certainly, through the chair. So we've applied for a grant to do some education and to hire a temporary individual that will go and be trained to go around and do these assessments that will be done on a voluntary basis. The $200,000, that's the maximum that's allowed under the grant. So there usually is a requirement for the municipality to contribute something, but our contribution would be a gift in kind. So we're, how much work we do in that area will depend on how successful we are with the grant application.
And when will you know about the grant application?
I believe we should know by the end of this month, if I recall.
And so if council had interest in that coming, we found out if we weren't for some reason successful in particular, council wanted to consider the FireSmart home assessment as a single project, you would let us know so that we could bring it back to budget deliberations.
Absolutely, we'll make a note of it, and if we're not successful, we'll have that discussion at budget.
Thank you.
Councillor O'Connor.
Thank you, Chair Bressie. I'd like to move committee receive this report for information.
Definitely in order. Any discussion or debate? That's a question. Thank you, Councillor O'Connor. I'm also wondering, I can't make a motion, but I'm wondering if a committee member might be willing to make a motion to ask administration to report back on progress on FireSmart initiatives. Just the reason for that is I trust administration that they're going to bring it back to us, but if it's on our outstanding items list, then we know when we're going to get a touch point. It might save us asking administration questions that we don't need to ask about when it's coming back if it's just on our oil list. So I'm wondering if somebody might be willing to make a motion to ask for a report on progress.
Sure.
All right, Councillor Berg.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion. I'm just trying to summarize this, that we get a report back on FireSmart initiatives. Bring that back to committee.
Great. And I'd assume with that, ask for the motion, I'd let administration put a timeline on that, and when they think it's appropriate, just I'd want it somewhere on our oil list so we remember it's a thing.
Thank you.
Great. I'll call that to question. That motion carries, and I think we can move on to indoor climbing wall. Chief Lemieux, I'll let you introduce this.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm going to turn it over to Stephanie Casually, our Executive Director of Recreation and Culture, to present her report.
Thank you, Chair Bressy. After the Grande Prairie Climbing Association presented to City Council, administration was directed to prepare a report outlining the requirements for a climbing facility that offered various types of climbing opportunities. During this process, administration identified a list of existing city-owned facilities that could potentially accommodate climbing features. Subsequently, the 2023 capital budget was amended to include funding for an indoor climbing wall. In collaboration with the Grande Prairie Climbing Association, administration has reviewed 2 sites in more detail: the area adjacent to the field house at the Eastlink Center, as well as the Activity and Reception Center. The Activity and Reception Center was identified as a preferred location, capable of accommodating a 2,400 square foot indoor climbing wall. The association has provided input on how to incorporate both bouldering and roped climbing activities within the space to support a wide range of skills and abilities. Identification of a site will enable the Climbing Association to apply for grants to turn their vision of an indoor climbing wall into a reality. The Climbing Association has also submitted a community group funding capital grant request, which has been referred to budget deliberations this year. Administration recommends that committee approve the Activity and Reception Center as a location for the future indoor climbing wall. And I believe that Kate from the Grande Prairie Climbing Association is joining us virtually. And with that, we are open to any questions.
Great. I do see Miss Weber online. Miss Weber, is there anything you wanted to add, or are you just here to observe?
Hi, I'm just here to observe, and I'm very excited to hear this. I'm like fist bumping and cheering, so.
Great. Awesome. Well, thank you for observing today, and thanks for the advocacy and the work I know you and your peers are doing on behalf of the community. Councillor Bosch.
You're welcome.
Thank you. My question, I guess, would be to the Climbing Association. You're looking for $403,000, but you're also speaking of exploring fundraising and sponsorship opportunities. Can you tell us a little bit about how that piece is going?
So maybe I'll hand this over to Ms. Cajolet first, and if she wants to head it off, then she can.
Certainly. Thank you, through the chair. So the Grande Prairie Climbing Association has applied for a community group funding grant. Their total request to kind of bring their vision to reality is estimated to be about approximately $403,000. In last year, as part of budget deliberations, City Council approved $115,000 that could be utilized for that. There is a subsequent capital project coming forward for this year to potentially add to that funding if Council approves the request and recommendation. And I do know, in discussion with the Climbing Association, that they have intended or plan to have conversation with other municipal partners and explore some other grant opportunities, such as potentially a CFIP grant. If a location is identified, they will be eligible to do that.
Mayor Clayton.
Thanks, Chair Bressy. Ms. Cajolet, can you tell me, I understand the size of the facility, but how much does it impact the total footprint of the facility? Does it mean that there's less space for pickleball, shooting hoops? And when it's used as an emergency center, how much less space would it mean that we could have in regards to people being in the facility?
Thank you, through the chair. So the 2,400 square feet would take approximately 3 panels on the side of the wall and then 1 panel at the end of the building between the overhead door and the corner of the building, sort of on the northwest corner. So the footprint impact if the facility was being utilized for any type of emergency response would be negligible. In terms of indoor recreation activities, there would be a small impact because the mats would also have to be put down on the floor. So it would be just anticipated that the indoor mobile skate park would be just adjusted and kind of reconfigured within that space to allow a bit of a barrier between that activity and the indoor climbing wall.
So if I could have a follow-up, Chair Bressy. So the existing, when we move the indoor mobile skate park into the facility, it can just be tightened up and it's not like we're taking pieces of it out or anything.
Through the chair, that is correct.
Okay.
I'm not. A question I had was, depending on how funding goes, there's different elements to this wall. Is it something that if there's only partial funding in place, we could build part of the wall one year, then build part another year, or is it really we have to build everything at once?
Through the chair, I think that certainly could be an option. There certainly would be benefit and value in working with a vendor that has already designed the entire component of the wall, but maybe since I've not been involved in that process, maybe Kate might have something to add from the Climbing Association.
Ms. Weber, I'm wondering if you have anything to add to that.
Hi, yes. We have explored that we could do kind of phase 1, phase 2 in installation. However, because the wall panels are kind of engineered to, for the spec of the space, the panels themselves would have to go up. The second phase we looked at was adding a mezzanine. And so that's kind of our phase 2 for bouldering that utilizes space kind of above, in the design. So that's kind of our phase 2, I guess. Phase 1 is the $403,000. And then the phase 2, we haven't put that forth yet, just because we do have that plan to do that after as an add-on to the space when we have funding in place.
Excellent. Thank you. I appreciate that information. Councillor Plott.
Thanks, Chair Bressie. I'm just wondering if we've done any analysis on what future revenue this could bring. I would assume that if we put a rock climb or a climbing wall in there, we're going to have a lot more patrons probably visiting that facility. Have we kind of anticipated what kind of additional revenue we think would be, or how much more utilization the facility would have with this in there?
Thank you, through the chair. No, an operating model has not been discussed yet. It would be anticipated that if we were collaborating and partnering with the Grande Prairie Climbing Association, that most of that opportunity would be to their benefit.
Okay, and then my just kind of building on that, is there an opportunity for naming rights specifically on this climbing wall in the future? And if there was, is that to the city or is that to the club?
Thank you, through the chair. We haven't gotten that far yet. Certainly, there probably could be some naming right opportunities, and benefits of that revenue would is something we would have to figure out.
So if I understand, so there's either potentially money coming in from the club to help offset this. If there was no money to the club, then it's 100% city funded. Those are still trying to find out the funding stream on this, and so. Is there allocated funding from the Rock or from the Climbing Association for this project?
Thank you, through the chair. I've not been notified that there is a specific amount of money allocated to this project yet. In discussion with the Climbing Association, they have identified a number of sponsors and organizations within the community that are willing to support sort of the construction and development process through gift in kind.
So I guess in the interim, we'd have to front load it and hope the number gets lower as it goes. Like, I'm just trying to still understand how we're funding it without knowing what we're going to get.
Through the chair, there would be no plan to pursue an RFP or anything until the funding is secured for the site. So, however, in identifying a site and earmarking that, it does allow the association to apply for grants that could be used to help offset the cost.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and I know that the group has said that they want to go pursue grants of their own in the past, but they're limited with that till we've established a location. So today the ask before us really is just location, and then funding can start being worked on by the group as well as potentially us for locations picked. Councillor Thiessen.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Bressie. This is just a question for Ms. Weber. In regards to phase 2, with the add-ons and mezzanine and stuff like that, is that going to increase the footprint of the climbing wall within the recreation activity center, or are we just adding up top for those boulders and stuff?
So maybe I'll go to Ms. Casual. Oh, sorry. Go. All right, go ahead, Ms. Weber.
Sorry. So it's just on top of, I don't know if you've ever been to vertically inclined rock climbing gym in Edmonton, but it's much the same. So it doubles the space by going up instead of out. So it actually doesn't take more of a footprint, but you get double the amount of bouldering space, which is non-roped space. So yeah, it's just above. It's like a little mezzanine, much like vertically inclined rock climbing gym in Edmonton.
Okay, no, thank you for that, Ms. Weber. I've been to vertically inclined, and my son actually used to be climber at the college in your program. But yeah, when you said mezzanine, I thought ground level rather than top level. So I just wanted to confirm that. Thank you.
Not seeing any other questions, so I know Councillor O'Connor is open to do business.
Thank you, Chair Bressy. I'd like to move that the committee recommend council approve the location of the indoor climbing wall at the Activity and Recreation Center.
Motion's certainly in order. Is there any discussion or debate? Not seeing any. I will call that to question. That motion carries, so this will go to council for discussion on Monday. Thank you again, Ms. Weber, for attending today. We appreciate that. And Mr. Lemieux, I'll turn it over to you to introduce our next agenda item.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next item is proposed recreation facility site options, and this is Ms. Cagelet's report, so I'll ask her to walk us through the report, please.
Thank you. Through the chair, the Swan City Football Club presented to City Council regarding the impact of the leisure center's demolition on soccer and other sports in Grande Prairie. During this presentation, Swan City Football Club proposed an air structure or dome facility that could accommodate a variety of sports and activities. Subsequently, Council passed a motion indicating preliminary approval to allocate up to $10 million from debenture for the proposed recreation facility. Council also approved Avondale as a preferred location for this facility. Administration has prepared 5 potential facility site plans for council review. Each option takes into consideration aspects such as parking and stormwater management. This information has been shared with the school division administration, and next steps involve discussion with the school boards to determine their potential support for any of the proposed concepts. Following this, administration intends to engage in a public consultation process involving the local neighborhood, community sport and recreation groups, as well as other community stakeholders. And I do have some animations and some renderings that I will show up, but I would like to acknowledge and say thank you to the GIS department for their assistance in developing the animations and renderings that will be used in the presentation. Okay, so for option 1, this is a facility east of 105 Street with a north-south orientation. So this would be a street view east from 112 Avenue, northwest from 104 Street, southeast from the bypass, and then another option southeast from the bypass as well. Option 2 would be the facility east of 105 Street with an east-west orientation. This conceptual rendering would be a view east from 112 Avenue. This one would be northwest from 104 Street. And this version would be southeast from the bypass. Option 3 for the facility located south of the pickleball courts. This street level rendering would be northeast from 106th Street. This one would be south from the bypass, and then another angle south from the bypass. Option 4 with the facility located north of the pickleball courts. This would rendering would be south from the bypass, and this option would be southeast from the bypass. Option 5, facility located south of the pickleball courts with a north-south orientation. Sorry, this would be northeast from 106th Street. Oops. frozen. Looking south from the bypass, and this one also south from the bypass. This video will be animation of what the shadow cast would look like for option 1. This would be option 2, east of 105 Street. And then option 3. Option 4. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Casually. I think I'm going to end up having a full queue by the end, but I saw Councillor Berg first, Councillor O'Connor, then Councillor Bosch.
Yeah, thanks, Chair Bressy. Love the graphics. Thank you so much. When it comes back to council, there's a couple that I'm just kind of curious about. In, I think, the first or the second slides, the shadow cast didn't actually show how it would affect the home. So my primary concern on any decision is how it looks from 104th Street and also to the back alley of those on 111th Avenue. And so there was a lot of different views, but I didn't get those views in particular, and I didn't really see the shadow cast extend that extra 3 or 4 seconds to see how it would affect the homeowners there. So for me, that's my single biggest concern, is how does this affect those 30 or 40 homes in that area. I love the graphics. Just curious if we could also get, say, I know why December 21st was chosen, because that's when the shadows are the longest, so that's the most exaggerated, but just kind of curious too what it would be on a typical summer day. I don't need necessarily all of them, but just those affecting or potentially affecting those homeowners. Now to the south, they wouldn't be affected by the sunshine, but those on the east side potentially could be losing some summer sun, and I just want to see that. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor O'Connor. Oh, all right. Councillor Bosch. Okay. Councillor Thiessen, then Palat.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm going to kind of echo Councillor Berg's comments. I really don't want to see long shadows over long times on some of the residents there. So I'd be more inclined to go with the facility further away from that shadow cast. My question is, in all the diagrams that were presented to council, and I know we're talking about the facility, but the parking lot seems to be stuck at a dimension of 219 times 626 feet, and in some of the pictures we're putting it across the street, and some we're putting it right beside it, but they all maintain that same rectangular feature. That's something that I think that we can play with. We know how many parking stalls we're going to need, but if it's a square or if it's a different type of shape, I think that would be good. But yeah, as far as the facilities going, the other consideration that I would have as well is shadow casting on the pickleball courts. We know that we have a lot of seniors and families that utilize those courts, especially outside when the weather's nice. You get a slight breezy day and a shadow cast on it, it can get quite chilly out on those pickleball courts. So I wouldn't want to impact that for half the day either, especially considering so many people take great enjoyment out of it. Those are my thoughts.
Councillor Plott.
Thanks, Chair Bressie. Just on the parking lot one too, I guess more of my concern would be, there's two options, one running kind of east-west, running north-south. I guess when I look at the running north-south, I feel like that would greatly stagnate what we could do with the rest of that land moving forward. If we did move to option 5 where we're putting it across, we're going to lose a ball diamond. I know way back in some of the drawings when this started was we were going to put back ball diamonds and potential soccer field and everything else, but I feel like if we move that parking lot going north-south, it pretty much stagnates. I don't think we could fit anything else in that land. So as far as building locations yet, I'm still undecided, but I know what I'm really decided on is I'd really want to see that parking lot go east-west on the very south end of the property. I think that sets up the site the best for overall long-term use, and it doesn't seem to matter where we put the dome other than if we put it near the bypass. That would be a concern for me. The other one is if we do put it on option 5, which is the more I look at it, the shadowing and everything else, other than Councillor Peace makes a good point with pickleball. I think it's going to have the less pushback in the community. I think it's a great location for it. I am concerned with us losing a ball diamond, though. We have a very huge slow pitch contingency in our city, and I hear constantly that we don't have enough good diamonds. So maybe that's just a push from their group. But what would be the plan to replace that diamond, or is there a plan to replace a potential diamond if we did put it on that location?
Thank you, through the chair. No, there has been no discussion about what replacing that diamond could look like. It certainly would be a need to have consultation with the school division and board to see if they're supportive of that potential site, and then what the impact would be for their students as well.
Okay. So I guess for what it's worth for me, I'm not a voting member, but I think number 2 and 5 make the most sense for me when I look at this report. As far as community pushback, shading, and best utilization of the overall site moving forward. Appreciate we're talking about a dome today, but there is a lot of land there that I just really want to make sure we're not stagnating for future use. If we did want to build a Eastlink Center North someday in our community, I want to make sure we leave the most land available to develop that later on.
Thank you. A question I had was looking at options 3 and 5 in the report. I noticed that option 5, it says it eliminates the option of realigning 112th Avenue in the future. But that same concern wasn't expressed with option 3, and they both go just as far south. So I'm kind of confused about why that's a concern with option 5, but not option 3.
Thank you, through the chair. That statement could have actually been removed from the option 5 synopsis. That was one of the future plans as part of the ARP initially, and then once the ARP was adopted, the decision was made not to realign 112 Avenue. So,
okay, excellent. Before we get into a discussion, are there any other questions? Right. I guess the last question I'll ask the administration is, what are you hoping to get out of today? Are you hoping that we narrow it down to just well, I assume that we'll probably want to send this to council, not just have committee decide what's doing public engagement. But in terms of what we're hoping council to prove, are you hoping us to say, hey, this is the one site that council wants to see? Or are you hoping for us to just narrow down the options so you can engage on a few? What are you hoping you get out of council next Monday?
Thank you, through the chair. Yes, the intent would be for council to narrow down the list a little bit so that administration can have engagement and discussion with the appropriate school division, and then do the public consultation.
So you don't necessarily just get down to one on Monday, though. Just less than 5 would be ideal.
Certainly, that's council's decision. I do note that if the additional shadow castings and drawings are required for decision making, I'll have to work with the GIS team to see if that is feasible to have those completed for Monday's council meeting. But if not, certainly could bring it back to the following council meeting.
Councillor Thiessen.
Unless the mayor wants to do business.
I have some questions.
She has some questions. Okay, I'll defer to the mayor since she's on this committee.
Sure, Mayor Clayton.
Thanks, Chair Bressy. A question in regards to option 4. You indicate that it impacts the 2 sport fields. And so before I say that, when this comes to council, can we have footprint drawings? Like I'd like to see option 1 in a footprint. Whatever this gets narrowed to, it's, trying to visualize them is hard. If it could just be similar to attachment 1, but with the options that committee narrows it down to today, to see the footprint of them.
So similar to the map that's identified? Yes.
Perfect, thank you. And so what I don't understand in option 4 there, what fields it's impacting?
The space of that facility is adjacent to the track.
It's not covering the track from what I saw.
No, it would be adjacent to that and that field. Those are sport fields that are utilized there.
Right, but it says, but it impacts them. How's it impacting them?
Well, if the facility, through the chair, if the facility was placed on that site, then that would eliminate those 2 sport fields from for recreation and sport use. Like summer use.
How? I thought I saw in the video it was beside them. In option 4, the track looks fine to me.
Sorry, if I could maybe help. Usually when this track meets, that's the spot where they're doing the throwing events. So shot put happens there, things like that. So that is used for track field meets. So it definitely would impact. I don't know if it would mean we couldn't do those there, but it certainly would impact how we currently run them.
Fields. Rugby, football, and soccer, and I don't know how it's impacting those sports because they don't play on that field. They play in the middle of the track.
Through the chair, no, they also play in the space. If I could get the camera to show on the X.
Oh, soccer, but not football. Football's not impacted there because they play in the track.
So some of the younger football groups would certainly practice in that space. So these fields are utilized, and there's also green space here that's utilized for practices by a number of our recreation sport groups.
Councillor, sorry, I'll go to Councillor Thiessen and Councillor Bosch.
Thank you very much, Chair Bressy, for throwing me back in the queue. Appreciate it. Just a question for Ms. Casually. Of all the 5 options, it seems like we're dancing around the leisure center footprint and the old soccer pitch that's going to be tore down. One of my thoughts on it is if we have a facility that's going to be a bit taller and cause some shadows, it might deflect the shadows if it's set up beside a bigger building, thereby not allowing the long cast shadow to actually hit the houses across the street. Can you explain to me why administration, it looks like you're kind of avoiding the leisure center area there when I think it looks like to me there's enough space to put the facility, especially going north-south, right over top of that old footprint.
Thank you through the chair. Primarily, the facility has been positioned in a way so that the parking lot is closer to the south end of the footprint, just primarily due to stormwater issues. And engineering is here if you'd like additional information on that.
So that's why we wouldn't put a building there, just because of the stormwater?
Through the chair, certainly moving it lower certainly allows for some additional opportunity to put other recreation amenities on the site in the future. But administration certainly could explore that if that's a desire of council.
Thank you for that. Recently, we had a report come to council in regards to costing out the road going to the bypass in that area there. would that be addressed through the engineering report that we're going to receive back on the costing and how that would cost, and if a recreation facility would work in there? Or it just seems like we have an old building footprint, and if we're going to realign the road and the storm sewer anyways, you know, I think this is all kind of feeding into each other here. So I'm just thinking about, you know, why are we taking one option off the table when it looks like we could easily fit a building there too? Yeah, I think the closest to it would be probably option 1, where it takes up half of the leisure center building, but not all of the leisure center building.
Thank you, through the chair. So just for clarification, Councillor Thiessen, you're inquiring about shifting the facility in this image further to the north.
Yeah, and the way I was looking at it is where the road cuts off there, is that could be the butt end of one building, of the building, and we could shift that up. That would take up probably most of the leisure center footprint for a new facility and give us space as well for the parking lot and potentially a new building later on.
Through the chair, conceptually, that's what this is. This is a conceptual map. So moving that building north, there probably isn't any significant challenges or issues with that. The thought process is largely keeping that parking lot furthest to the south and keeping that stormwater retention at the lowest point in the site. There is wiggle room to move up and down 20, 40, 50 feet, whatever that distance may be. So conceptually, all of that, those details could be figured out while we're doing the detailed design of this facility.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, in my queue, I've got Councillor Bosch, Mayor Clayton, Councillor Berg, Councillor O'Connor.
Thank you, Chair Bressie. I don't sit on this committee, so I'm going to make a comment based on that. I think this is a significant decision that we have to make as a council, and removing some of the potential selections. For me, I would like to see this go to Council Committee of the Whole. I don't think we have any information on the school's opinions. We have already asked on the shadow cast if that can be changed slightly so that we can see more time in that. So limiting us to one or two potential plans without others involved, I don't think today's the day, in my opinion.
And I definitely don't think it's anybody's intention to say council can't discuss more options or full options. I think the intention today is we're asking a lot of questions saying, hey, here's more information we need before we make a decision. So the intent of this meeting, I think, is to make sure that we're setting council up with all the information council will need to make this decision, not for committee to limit council's options. Mayor Clayton.
Thanks. Curious if there's any consideration given to moving the parking lot over the leisure center footprint. To me, if that parking lot was adjacent to the soccer pitch, behind Peace Wapiti, and at the north end of the property, it leaves a significant amount of land south of what that parking lot could be. So I'm just curious why the parking lot wasn't considered to be right up on that leisure center footprint.
Through the chair, I can take that question. We did look at that option. It would be a more expensive and more challenging option due to stormwater. The site drains to the south, so where that parking lot is now, if we're going to be retaining water, that is where we're going to be maximizing our bang for a buck with that retention and with our use of land. If we have the parking lot further north, we can put some of that retention in that parking lot, but we would still need to deal with that south portion of the site, which would mean upsizing pipes or putting in a small storm pond or other kind of controls to deal with the stormwater there.
I mean, I appreciate that. I just guess it's a bit unfortunate because there's going to be some sterilized land there that's not utilized in any of the options that we have. where the leisure center footprint currently is.
I have Councillor Berg, Councillor O'Connor, Councillor Plott.
Yeah, thanks, Chair Bressie. So just to reassure Councillor Bosch, I'm ready to do business eventually, but the idea is to send this to council for a more robust debate, and at that council meeting, that's where we'll whittle things down and help make that decision. So I don't think we're eliminating anything today from what I'm picking up. It'll come at a full council meeting. We're more involved. I do agree with Councillor Palat. I think that parking lot needs to run east-west so that we sterilize the least amount of land. And just another point of clarity, we're actually not losing any recreation fields. We're actually covering recreational fields. So we're replacing a field with a potential covered recreation dome. And then there is still that patch of future dirt where the comp is. There's a number of options that I'm sure we can address down the road there, be it additional soccer fields or what have you. But again, that's for future conversation, but we're actually not eliminating anything with this addition.
We're enhancing the space.
Exactly, we're enhancing.
Yep.
Thank you, Councillor Berg. Councillor O'Connor.
Thank you, Chair Bressie. I'm in agreement that I'd like to see everything, and we do a little bit of what are the impacts that can happen, and let's make sure we make an informed decision. I don't think we should limit anything for council to make that decision, so I think let's leave it open, but I'd like to see all the footprint and what the potential ramifications are. And a couple of them mentioned stormwater and water getting off the site. So I think it has an important impact. So I think we'll wait and see.
Yeah, and definitely talk about appropriate business when we get to business. I think an appropriate motion would be something like just refer this matter to council, not narrow down options. And because I do agree with those concerns. At the same time, I would hate for us to get to council on Monday and go, well, here's more information that we need that staff doesn't have today because we didn't ask questions today. So I would encourage committee just to refer this matter, not to narrow anything down, but I also would encourage all members of council, whether you're on this committee or not, to make sure your administration know right now what questions you might have so that we can make a decision on Monday and get going on this. Mayor, if it's all right with Councillor Plott, could I let Mayor Clayton jump? Mayor Clayton.
Thanks. Can you remind me, Ms. Casually, the life expectancy on the current indoor soccer pitch, as well as what we're hearing potentially in time frame for Peace Wapiti? I feel like 10 years is in my memory, but can you remind me?
Thank you, through the chair. The current indoor soccer pitch, certainly the lifespan for that sort of pre-engineered type building is about 20 to 25 years. I think that this facility certainly is viable for another 5 or so years, maybe even longer with some additional infrastructure supports. So a bit of investment may be required to extend the life of the existing facility. And in terms of the public or Peace Wapiti Public School Division, I have heard that time frame that you referenced as well, but I have no information one way or the other to speak definitively on that.
Councillor Plott.
Thanks, Chair Bressie. I think when it comes back to council, something that I think would be helpful for me and maybe some of my colleagues is when I look at the options and the proposed leisure center comp site, it'd be nice to know what a ball diamond looks like and what a soccer field looks like or a football field to kind of put in perspective. If we do I'm just looking at option one. If we did go with option one right now, could you actually do anything else with that land? And that might help make us some of our decisions. I guess for me, it would help make a decision if option one looks great, but at the end of the day now, we can't put another ball diamond or soccer field in that space. That probably changes my opinion whether I like option one or not, and maybe I'm the only one that thinks that, but I know we've had shadow planning way back with the school district, and there was 3 or 4 ball diamonds, and there was all these green spaces being added back in, and it's kind of hard to tell when there's buildings in it now. So just for a reference point, if you could almost have a little model of if it's possible to kind of show potential fields that would fit in each of those areas as well. Because I agree with Councillor Berg, we're enhancing the area, but in the summertime, you can rent an outdoor field for pretty cheap and have the whole field. And so we're going to ask them to stagnate an entire dome for one sport. So I don't think that's the intent of that for myself anyways with that. So I just want to be conscious that we have a lot of summer use in this area too. And I think we can enhance the summer use as well as a dome in that area with more fields being added, which would be my hope with that, having a facility that could have washrooms and change rooms and everything else to utilize in that area, could be a really good opportunity for us to enhance this area for more ball, more soccer, more football, more types of outdoor activities as well. So I think those little shadow drawings of what those conceptually could look like would help a lot. Thanks.
A question I've got is I'm looking at option 3. I'm wondering if any exploration's been done if we put the dome there of expanding the existing parking lot so there's more parking between the dome and the pickleball courts, so that we don't need any, or we don't need as much parking east of Willie DeWitt Drive of 105th Street.
Through the chair, so can you please clarify where you were thinking of extending parking?
So basically where it says proposed auxiliary space right now, if there's been any exploration of that being extended parking.
Through the chair, no, certainly there hasn't, because that space is currently utilized as green space for a number of recreation teams, but is certainly something that could be discussed.
And I know for me personally, and maybe I'm the only one, I don't know if the rest of council has this concern, but for me, I really am thinking about this space, not just now, but in 20 to 30 years when Peace Wapiti Academy comes down, and maybe Grande Prairie's another 50, 60,000 people then. And thinking about the potential for big redevelopment in the area, for maybe it's the next Eastlink Center, or maybe it's something else. And I know the more compact we can make everything now, the more opportunities there are potentially for that council that has to deal with the space in another 20, 25 years. So just thought that might be worth exploring. Councillor O'Connor.
Miss Casually, you had mentioned that area that Dylan Councillor Bressie is talking about just north of that facility. Did you not say that that was a practice area for athletics? So if that became a hard pavement, I think that would make it problematic for the athletics around the track. Am I not correct?
Thank you, through the chair. So there has been some discussion with the athletics club about potentially relocating some amenities to that space. No plans have been confirmed there yet, and I think that we do have an alternative desire than that current practice field.
Councillor Platt.
Thanks, Chair Bressie. That just tweaked my memory on something else. When I look at option 4, going back to memory, we had a plan of potential multi and commercial on that stretch along the bypass. Would that basically say we couldn't do any development on that side now with the dome, or is that consideration gone? I thought we'd had an approved plan sort of thing with an area structure redevelopment plan that we were going to put some multifamily and some commercial along that road. And for me, what I like about that idea is we've had some comments coming back from people saying the dome could be ugly. Well, if we end up putting multifamily and commercial over time on that, you won't even see the dome from the bypass. So I'm just wondering, is that not part of the long-term plan, was commercial and multi, or was that more just to the east?
Through the chair, the area structure plan shows the multifamily and the commercial just on the east side of the roadway. So we've tried to position this dome in a spot that it will allow for the roadway to still be constructed with minimal impact, leaving enough of a footprint for side slopes for that roadway going up to the bypass. The biggest challenge in that site is that there is no sanitary services on the north end right now.
Okay, sorry, my memory was wrong on that. Thanks.
Not seeing anybody else trying to get in the queue, so Councillor... Oh,
sorry, just gonna...
Yeah, sure.
I appreciate the non-committee members' intent to want to discuss this. I do think that if there's options that committee wants to eliminate from discussion, that because there is some requests coming back for what does the field look like, what is the parking changes this way, I think that committee could eliminate some options today.
And if committee chose, so members of committee can make whatever motion you feel is. I'm not saying to support it, but definitely would rule the motion in order if it had certain options in it. I would highlight that if there are members of council, if committee does eliminate some options, there are members of council who thought they should be in, there's nothing saying that you can bring a motion at council to bring it back in. So committee's setting up council for a discussion, but certainly not preventing council from doing whatever council desires to do. Mayor Clayton, do you have a motion in mind?
Well, I think somebody else did, and I can amend it accordingly.
Councillor Berg, do you have a motion in mind?
Sorry, just simply the one that's recommended. So I'll make it, and if she wants to edit, I'd like to move committee recommend council select preferred site layouts or layout for the proposed recreation facility to guide the public engagement program.
Okay, so then I'll look to Mayor Clayton if
Sure.
you wish to amend that.
My amendment would be that we recommend council select the preferred layout from option 3, 4, and 5. Speaking to that, so that's a removal of 1 and 2.
Sorry, just before you speak to that, Councillor Berg, I'll look at you if you're open to having that friendly amended before we put it on the table, or if you'd like that to be an actual motion to amend it.
I guess I'd like a moment to review the amendment before I actually accept or decline.
Right, well, in that case, why don't we make it a voted amendment? So what I'll do is
Sure.
I'll say you made that motion that was recommended, and then I'll take a motion to amend Councillor Berg's
thank you.
amendment if you're not sure about it. So, Mayor Clayton, if you'd like to speak to that motion to amend.
Sure. Just in speaking to the removal option 1 and 2, I believe that 1 and 2 are options that are not what the community's looking for, not what the neighborhoods are looking for. I think that if we're going to rejig things around, that we should, when we do that, in consideration of fields, etc., that 3, 4, and 5 give the best options for the community. To me, I think the parking lot, as mentioned by multiple people, should run east to west. I think that consideration of future development, also consideration of the soccer pitch eventually either being removed, rehabilitated, or replaced needs to be in consideration. And I don't think option 1 or 2 suit the needs of what we're looking for. So if we're going to play with modeling, let's narrow it down a little bit. And so for me, option 1 and 2 aren't something I would support.
Councillor Berg, would you like to speak to that amendment?
Yeah, actually, just reviewing, I see exactly what she's getting at, and I'm not opposed to that, so I'll accept that amendment.
Well, I'll still do the motion. I already put it on the table, so I think
Sure.
procedurally we should still vote on that.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, and to speak in support of that, I've a lot of concerns in the neighborhood about this facility. I really do think that it's proximity to houses that are there. I know for me, I'd get excited about 1 or 2 if we were at a point where we could be talking about, hey, we're also going to be building a swimming pool here in the next couple of years, and we're going to share change rooms, washrooms, all of that. But unfortunately, I don't think we're far enough in those conversations now, and I don't think we can wait another year or 2 to make a move on this dome. And so I do agree that those 2 options are there. So I think I will support this motion. But again, I will highlight that if there's a member of council who feels very strongly we should be doing 1 or 2, there's nothing to say you can't bring that to council meeting as well. So I will support this for now. Though. Any other discussion or debate on the motion to amend? Then I will call the motion to amend to order or to question.
It's not coming up.
Here we go. That motion carries. So now we've got a motion to refer to council considering sites 3, 4, or 5. Would anybody like to speak to this motion? Councillor Plott?
Thanks, Chair Bressie. Not on the committee, but if we're trying to give direction today, it sounds like there's maybe some consensus if we're going to go back to maybe also talking about parking lot locations. I think we're going to ask for drainage reports and other things that could impact costs or budgeting. If we're kind of settled on maybe not wanting it running north-south, that we should let administration know that today as well.
Mayor Clayton?
Yeah, for the council deliberation, could you bring the cost impact of having the parking lot run east-west over the leisure center footprint? You had mentioned that there was upgrading required to the south, the land that would be to the south if the parking lot were to run east to west there. So if you have it today, great, but if not, could it come back to council on when we deliberate this?
I'm seeing some scribbling from administration, so I'll assume they're going to do the best they possibly can.
If I can, there's
Mayor Clayton.
Let's just say in a perfect world that everybody liked what I liked, and the parking lot ran east to west over the leisure center footprint. I'm curious how much space that leaves below. So if the footprint of the parking lot ran east to west, what could happen to the south of that parking lot? Could it be 2 soccer fields? Could it be 2 ball diamonds? Could it be 3 ball diamonds? It'd be nice to see what could fit in that space below.
Yeah, and
and speaking to that, just for me, I tend to like option 4, to be honest. I appreciate Councillor Platt's concerns, but I do still think there's enough space there. I don't have a crystal ball and don't know the timeline and proposed commercial multi, but if the soccer pitch and the school weren't there in 10 years, that opens up even more space. So if the parking lot with option 4, the expansion of that parking lot, in the meantime, supports the indoor soccer pitch, supports Peace Wapiti School, supports the football field, and a covered dome which ran north to south along the bypass. But I also like option 5, and I know, and 3 being similar. But what I don't like is that parking lot running north to south on any of those. So,
Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you very much, Chair Bressie. I don't want to be inclined to disagree with the chair. I do have a crystal ball. So and I do actually like option 1 with a few tweaks to it, and I'm not opposed to a north, south, east, west, or even an L or J-shaped parking lot, as long as we can fit the cars in there and people can park. My question is in regards to the roadway. The roadway that we're considering is going to run directly through this area, yes? So that brings me concern to the east-west parking lot, because especially if we're talking option 4 or even option 5, it means that people are going to go to the dome and they're going to have to park across the street in order to access the recreation facility on an east-west. I don't see the space that we can generate in there, and I definitely, as a safety concern, considering that's likely in the future, like 5 to 10 years from now, going to be a fairly busy road, I don't like the idea of families having to cross the street from the parking lot to access the recreation facility. So those are my concerns around safety and the east-west parking lot. Like I was saying before, and I will likely bring up an amendment at the council to bring back at least option 1 with tweaks. There's space inside, I guess on the east side, to run a north-south parking lot on the old comp site, and you can even do a J parking lot, and you save space for a future recreation facility, potentially a swimming pool 20 years from now that could be attached to the soccer dome, as we've seen in other areas like in Edmonton with their soccer dome, where you can attach like the soccer dome as an auxiliary like building to another recreation facility. So I'll be imagining all those options before Monday and see what we can bring to the table. But again, I really don't like the idea of people having to cross a busy road to get to the rec facility. Thank you.
All right, so we do have a motion on the table to refer this to council for full debate, and I know there's going to be lots more questions at council. Anybody else need to discuss this motion to refer to council? And I would encourage us to use this time to ask questions and get information, not to debate, because we'll do that at council. But Councillor Palat, if...
No, mine just a question if we could get more information on how many parking stalls are currently available on the, I guess, west side of the road. We've got, a plan that shows potentially, it looks like so many stalls, parking lot dimensions on the other side, but I'm just curious on how many stalls are currently available on the west side of 105th Street now.
Any other discussion or debate on this motion? I'm not seeing any, so I will call this motion's question. And that motion carries. Any further business we need to do on this matter? Thank you for the report. We appreciate you both giving us all the information you gave us today, and I know the work that will be going into this week to set up our conversation on Monday. So thank you to you and all the other staff involved. I'll turn it over to Chief Lemieux for our next report on school bus safety.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I would ask Mr. Ross Gear, the Sergeant at Enforcement Services, who's prepared the report, to come and speak to his report, please.
Welcome, Mr. Gear.
Good morning.
Thank you. And through the chair, I trust you've all had a chance to look at the report, so I won't delve into too much. Yeah, basically, the administration believes that the best option when with regards to red lights and stop arms is to maintain the traffic bylaw as it is, maintain the status quo. There's been a lot of debate back and forth. They both have some merit, but when we looked at a very broad range of reports from other places, and they all seem to be very consistent, that although there is some risk, the risk is very low, and it actually seems to be just as much risk on either side. So that would be administration's recommendation as per the report. Well, part of the report was not just to deal with school bus, the stop arm question. It was any other things that might come up from the school division and from Student First. And they did not have, we had a very good, robust conversation, a very good stakeholder meeting. Not too much came out of it. There was a few minor things that we certainly are going to address. One of those, just for information, one of those was at some of the schools, the buses, they feel they don't have enough area to park. Well, we'll look at that through traffic engineering and through enforcement and see if we can help them out. But no real other issues came up other than the stop arm question. So you've had the report. I'll try to answer any questions you might have.
So thank you. Looking around. One thing I'm curious about is a concern I hear from residents sometimes. I'm curious if it came up in these meetings at all, was windrows and snow storage at school bus locations and kids having troubles getting in and out. Did that come up at all with these stakeholders?
It did with the Student First bus drivers. Yes, they go. Sometimes it's very difficult, no matter where they would offload the children. The children have a hard time getting across a windrow. So that is something that we'll have to work with transportation, see if there's some options there. That's certainly a concern. And not only just for the students, but all pedestrians. That's been a concern that's come up a number of times. So we'll have to address that as it comes up, and it'll be something that we'll have to engage all our partners, especially our partners in transportation.
Thank you. I know for me personally, that's the only personal concern I've had with school bus safety in the city is seeing kids out front of my house climbing that windrow has been scary a few times. Councillor Berg.
Yeah, just when it comes around to business, I'd like to do that. But just a compliment. I appreciate this report. We had a delegation come to us some time ago with concerns around the lack of use of stop arms. And at the time, I was quite surprised. But again, with a little bit of logic and explanation, I can see why. The stop arms were primarily, in theory, used to allow children to cross mid-street, and people weren't necessarily stopping mid-street. So by not using stop arms, the children are encouraged to use a regulated crosswalk for their safety. So again, a little bit of context shifted my opinion and my thoughts, so thank you for the report.
Thank you.
I know for me, though, one little bit of commentary I'd like to offer on the report is sometimes I hear residents say, hey, they don't allow this because they're worried about traffic congestion. And I know for me, I'd be very surprised if there was any member of council who was saying, hey, I'm not okay adding 60 seconds to somebody's commute to keep kids safe. I really think this is about the safety of kids. I do get worried about congestion in terms of does it make impatient motorists who are then more likely to hit a kid further down the road. I get it. Worried about congestion in that matter, but I'm fine with you taking an extra 90 seconds to get to work to keep kids safe. So I just want to be really clear that from my perspective, I think based on this report, I do support our current practice. But for me, and I'm sure everybody else, it's 100% about the safety of children. I think this is what's safest for kids, not most convenient for motorists. Councillor Berg, I'm not seeing anybody else in the queue. You said you'd be willing to do some business?
Yeah, I would like to move that committee receive this report for information.
Excellent. Definitely in order. Not seeing any discussion or debate. I'll call its question. And Councillor Bressy's in favor. That motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Gear, for the report, and more importantly, for all the work that I know went into it. And thank you to our stakeholders for engaging in this.
Thank you, Chair.
And for our final report, I'll hand it over to Chief Lemieux to introduce a report on the Coordinated Care Campus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this report deals with the roof replacement on Phase 3 of the Coordinated Care Campus. The building condition assessment report that was provided to us on March 2021 did identify the need to replace the roof section above the former hotel rooms, and that would have to be done, it said 2 to 5 years, and that report is 2 years old. So we're approaching that timeline where we will need to replace the roof on the Phase 3 of the Coordinated Care Campus. So City Administration is recommending that we proceed with that now because that'll give us significant cost savings. It's a lot easier to proceed with that replacement now that we're into renovations and we've got the third floor opened up. So the recommendation is that committee recommend council approve $780,000 to replace the roof now at the Coordinated Care Campus, and funding would come from the Financial Stabilization Reserve. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Is anybody willing to do the business? Councillor O'Connor.
Thank you, Chair Bressy. I'd like to move committee recommend council approve $760,000 80. Sorry, eyesight. I was trying to reduce it to replace the roof at the Coordinated Care Campus for the Financial Stabilization Reserve from the.
Councillor O'Connor, definitely in order. Mayor Clayton.
Just wondered if Councillor O'Connor would take in a friendly amendment up to $780,000.
Up to is wonderful.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, to speak to it, definitely support this going to council and we'll support it there. For me, it makes sense to do the cost savings. If we know we're going to have to replace this shortly anyways, it makes sense to the cost savings. But also for me, this is people's homes we're talking about. And it doesn't sound like it would be fun to live in I don't think it would be fun to live in a home where your roof's getting replaced. And so if we can do this before people are living there, I think that's a lot better from a human client services perspective as well. Councillor Berg.
Yeah, thanks. And just to speak to this too, I know that there's a lot of concern over costs around Community Care Campus, but with 2/3 of this section is actually future city administration and bylaws. So a lot of people aren't quite aware or fully aware that a reasonable amount of space in this building is for our bylaw and some city administration as well.
Excellent. Thank you. I will call this to question. That motion carries. And with that, I think we can move to our outstanding items list, Chief Lemieux.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So on the outstanding items list, we've covered item 1262 today and item 1273. So I would ask that those two be removed. And if I can make one more comment with regards to the site selection recommendation for the recreational facility. So we'll do our very best to answer all of the questions and to bring back the shadow information. We'll do our very best. If that's not possible, that may have to be pushed to the subsequent council meeting, but we'll know very shortly.
Excellent. Thank you, Chief Lemieux. Any questions on the outstanding items list? Anybody willing to make a motion? Councillor O'Connor.
Chair Bressy, I'd like to move committee receive the October 10 outstanding items list as amended for information.
Definitely in order. Any conversation or debate? Not seeing any. I'll call that question. Councillor Bressy is in favor. And that motion carries. And with that, I will call this meeting adjourned.